Hey painters. So here we are with the palette that we created, mixing a bunch of different greens and exploring what those neutrals occurred, how those neutrals occurred by mixing complements together, at least a couple of them. There are many more. So I have my still life here next to me to demonstrate how you might go about mixing quantities of color and doing a little bit of pre-mixing relating to your actual palette. So we know there are going to be a lot of crossovers here because we have a red-green still life. And so I thought I'd just do a little bit of kind of working through my still life, which will be different than yours in terms of quantity and all of that. So make sure you're adjusting your learning here when you look at your own still life. So my still life has a background that's green, a certain quantity of this pink versus a certain quantity of the black, the red. The light is coming from this direction. I also have daylight happening, so your lighting will look a little bit different. And actually, I just want to show you quickly, I'm going to turn off the lamp that I have to show you sort of the difference in light. So when I turn off this lamp, I'm in daylight right now. You can see how very different the color reads. And what's happened there, and we're going to talk about light and temperature. So things got a little cooler, but they also, the shadows really changed. And so I'm using a light, even though this is very nice light, daylight, it's not creating the shadows that I want for this particular project. So I do want you to make sure that the shadows are articulated as best as possible with your light. So I'll put this back on. And you can see how suddenly we're getting more of a sculptural feel through those shadows and more drastic tonal shifts. So, and when I say tonal, that means light and dark, right? So you want to make sure that you're looking at your particular still life. And the first thing that you might do is pick the area of the still life that has what you perceive to be the most quantity of something. And this is fairly equally distributed, but that green is something that I'm going to want to identify right away. So, because there is quite a bit of it. So I've got all these greens and I'm like, well, which one is that? And the green does stay fairly consistent in terms of, how the light is hitting it. However, it does get a little lighter and cooler up here and darker as it heads away from the light. So that also might be, once you find it, you only have to adjust it a little bit as you go. So, you are looking at your palette, you're like, I have a Viridian green, I've mixed some other greens. You're looking at them right away and kind of, a lot of people do this technique of putting some paint on the back of your palette knife and looking and comparing. And to me, this green, the ultramarine green, ultramarine and yellow green, seems a little bit warm to me, but it may come in handy. This is the bluer green version of it, but I think I will head toward that Viridian first and just look at it there. And I feel like there's a relationship even before I've adjusted it to that green. It's not that green, but I feel like there's a relationship. So maybe I start with that green and think about what it needs. And I think it needs a yellow green, so I might add some of my yellow green. This is yellow green too, made with Viridian, but I'm just gonna, for fun, mix up what I have with the ultramarine blue and yellow. And I see that a lot of the coolness has kind of gone away from it by adding so much of that yellow. So maybe I'm going to add some more Viridian back into it to get back what I'm perceiving as a little bit of coolness to the green. Okay. And then you might hold it up and look again and see, And one thing that I notice about these, the construction paper, is that it gives almost like a dusty quality to it when you're looking at it in light, because it is matte and not shiny. So sometimes you will feel like you need to add white to something because of that dusty quality it has, and you can feel free to do that. This is a saturated color with no white in it, and it doesn't have a complement, so this is still considered a saturated green. And I'm feeling like this is going to be useful for me, and so I want to kind of keep some of that there, and then maybe explore how with more Viridian I may get, a variety basing off of that. Again, feel free at any point in the video when I'm mixing to fast forward, or obviously through this whole thing to increase the speed of the video, because it is laborious. Some people just like it though, to watch the mixing. So getting deeper there, and then maybe I want to see what adding a cerulean blue yellow mixture in the blue-green does in terms of maybe how I would approach some of the shadows, because the shadows are dark, but they still have a blue-green to them. And so by doing this while I'm mixing, I'm getting a sense of where I might put down this color, and am I heading toward it, rather than just kind of picking one, being like, that's good enough, and then plunking it down on my painting. I'm exploring what I'm seeing first. I might also say, hey, what if I added sort of my cool Viridian green with white in it, and brought it to that warmer green to see what a little bit of white and Viridian might do to bring it to more that very light part of the green. And that starts to feel pretty good too, so this is the method by which you can, and I could do this forever, really, and kind of come up with, oh my goodness, I thought I'm just seeing two greens, the base green and the shadow, but I'm really seeing that a lot of these are involved here. And that's where you want to be, right? So if you've got a good little variety, then you might move on. You might even say, all right, I'm going to start my painting though, so I want to mix up. If I got really close to some colors that felt good, you might mix up a bit more of it, but you might not. You might want to try it out first. So those are the greens. Your pink, you might just look up at your red, and I'm saying, I feel like that's pretty amazing how that looks a lot like that to me, even the value of it so far. And likewise, that the cadmium red with white feels like it's going to relate in some of these areas. So I might not need to mix those yet. I might just be like, I think I'm going to use those. I'm going to probably tone them down in different areas, but I got those. My whites, I'm kind of seeing that same thing I saw when I was mixing the tomatoes, that the shadow colors in the whites really feel akin to this alizarin crimson and Viridian green mixture, and that the white, if I kept adding white and then maybe some yellow green to that to warm up some of the areas, that I might feel good about that, so I might not mix that in advance. One thing you could think about, and also this cadmium red, I feel like I'm going to use some kind of combination between the two of these, and maybe even some yellow-green to warm up that area where the light's hitting it. So you're getting ideas about it, but once you've got your palette out, you're thinking about it. The black, I'm starting to feel like, yep, I'm going to do probably some Viridian Green and alizarin Crimson. I might add, again, like some yellow green where the light is raking across it and warming it up. I might add a little white to it where it feels like it needs to come up. A little bit more in value, I might add white and a little bit more warmth, yellow green. I might add a little red to it. So just looking at your palette and looking at your still life, this is, you know, somewhere where you go, whoa, what's going on there? So that is in addition to the black and the white, this is sort of a neutral color that is in your still life. And it's not quite neutral, but it is a color that you're going to have to use red and green in the theory to achieve. And so, you know that I'm giving you this assignment with red and green, so probably you're going to use red and green. So I'm going to take, this is just pure cadmium, and start with that cadmium again. And while we neutralize this quite a bit, and it's more toward the green side, this has, to me, quite a bit of the red still involved in it. So I want to neutralize this red because it's certainly not red, right? But I want to see if I added maybe a yellow green to that. So this is, again, still using complements because I don't have yellow on my palette. I have yellow green, and starting to head toward desaturating. That red. And the cadmium red is a really powerful tint, hue. You have to use a lot to kind of get it away from itself. So you might start to feel like, yeah, it's way too orange, but that's something. And then maybe you go toward, maybe I'll use my ultramarine blue green. And you might notice that I moved it to the side and didn't use all of it, so I could kind of see how that affects it. Of course, when you're mixing, at first you want to kind of try it out in smaller quantities so you don't waste a lot of paint. So if you're way off base, you're like, well, at least I don't have a giant pile of a color that I'm not going to use. Try and use, these are about dime size amounts at first. You can always mix more if you remember what you did, which is part of painting, right? You might forget. So here's a pretty neutral, which might work in some of these areas in the shadow, but I feel like I need to bring back some of the redness. So this is using complementary colors to desaturate to find neutrals, okay? And that's starting to feel like a color that might be useful to me. I can warm it here when I need to. I might add white to it. I might add, go directly to the pink to find some of that, the neutrals that I'm seeing in there. But generally speaking, as with the greens, if you find the variety that's in it and you put them down next to each other, it'll start to feel more and more like that. So I hope that this is helpful. We'll show more as I demo doing some of the painting itself, but this is the first process before you even begin to paint on the painting. All right, great.